All right. Hello, friends. Yay, everything works. Check that out. I totally broke down my entire setup and then, oops, sorry, it's really warm in here. Totally broke down my entire setup and then reset it up. And so I'm glad everything works properly. Hope everybody's doing okay. I don't think anybody's watching live right now, which is totally fine. We're gonna go do some work anyway, regardless of if you're watching or not. Let me just double check and make sure that I'm right about that. Yep. Just me right now, which is totally okay. Welcome if you're watching later. So once again, we're going to be writing a post. I'm going to be writing a post for what's going on my blog, my website tomorrow, which is Wednesday the 25th. I'm about to run out of a battery. Don't have anything plugged in. So you're going to have to give me just a second to get all that hooked up, because otherwise my computer's going to die really quickly. I'll be right back. Okay. Now we're good to go. Computer's plugged in. Everything is super kosher. Oh, that's weird. Sorry, I'm just working around trying to be able to mess with Windows properly. Cool. So, today's stream is all going to be on writing a post for to explain why some people, software engineers specifically, may have an issue with using middleware like Wise or Fmod or whatever. It's kind of notorious in the game audio community that if you're independent, a lot of times you have to put up a fight to be able to use middleware. I haven't ever been completely independent. Therefore, I haven't ever had to negotiate using middleware. But I've got some friends who have before. Specifically, there's a story of a friend that I'm not going to name for, privacy reasons, who was trying to use Wise. And what's interesting about this is, especially with Wise, the communication, the constant thing is that Wise's licensing is cost prohibitive, right? I'm not going to get into a discussion about that because I honestly haven't looked at Wise's licensing on a very long time. Because I don't ever need to buy Wise, right? I have worked with AAA game studios most of my entire game career. And therefore I haven't ever had to negotiate with somebody to make them use middleware. However, I've had enough of these conversations now, and this story will parlay out why I'm even writing this blog. But anyway, Wise is supposedly cost prohibitive. I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is for a lot of, especially small independent developers. I think also what I've heard is that the cost structure for it isn't very clear as to exactly how much you're going to spend. And it's just not always, sorry, crick in the neck. not always clear as to what you're going to spend. Whereas Fmod, as to my understanding, is less expensive and more clear as to what you're going to spend. So a lot of people end up using Fmod, especially with independent development. So regardless, though, there's always the fight of, well, we can just build our own thing, right? So I've thought that there would be something to talk about in that realm of sound engineers, sound designers having these conversations of like the frustrations of trying to even get middleware on the job. Because everybody complains about how hard it is or how difficult it is, or that it should just be standard or whatever. And I'm not floating one way or the other on any of this. Where I see people complaining or talking about how they're frustrated or anything, I try to solve those problems. So again, I had a friend who who was working on an independent game where, oddly enough, the creative director and the finance director, guys who were handling the money in creative, were totally cool with being on Wise. So the cost was not the problem. However, there was a developer on the team, and I'm assuming it's the lead developer, who continued to battle against using Wise and did not want to have it in their code base. And so there needed to be some compromise and some persuasion to make this happen, because the two sides were butting against each other. You've got the sound designer, who's my friend, who was really wanting to use Wise and really like, A, doesn't want the programmer to build their own system. B, if they build their own system, then everything's going to take forever because the programmer has other things to do. And C, the Wise interface is really familiar, right? So if my sound designer friend is going to work with whatever the programmer decides to make, then it's going to be an issue because they're going to have to learn a whole new system, right? So there's all these, and not to mention, like, the sound designer can come up with, this is going to be way more expensive, my rate's going to be more expensive, it's going to be a hell of a lot slower, why don't you use this, right? The programmer didn't care about any of it. So I worked through some conversations with some developer friends of mine to figure out from a developer's perspective, because if you're ever working with somebody and you're trying to persuade somebody and you're trying to have a good debate conversation where you disagree and you're trying to come to a middle ground, the only way to make it work really is to listen from the opposite party's perspective, right? So the sound designer friend of mine needed to know why exactly the programmer didn't want to use Wise. And he might not tell him in words. The programmer might not tell my friend in words my friend can understand. That information might not be shared in a way that is clear, right? So I went to a third party, another programmer friend of mine, and figured out what the issue was, or why essentially programmers might not want to use Wise, period. So this post is all about that story. It's going to be all about that story. Maybe someday I'll just talk at my camera instead of writing blogs, and then you can watch it that way. Yeah, so this post is going to be all about that story and why essentially it's going to be for sound designers to understand that they need to get out of their own heads, because not everybody views the world the same way that you do. And just because something's easy for you doesn't mean it's easy for everybody else, right? Or it works that way. So that's kind of the moral of that story. Give me just a minute. And then I'm going to get to writing. If you see my mouse going around and you see it so it looks like I'm clicking things and whatever, and you don't see what the hell I'm clicking on, that is that's by design. That's entirely by design. I'm showing you one window of my screen. So cool. Oh, weird. And then I'm looking at OBS, my title is up in the left-hand corner, and that's really odd. It's not supposed to be that way. Let's see if I can move it live. Oh, no! Not what I meant to do. Can't undo that. Oh, Lord. Okay, I'm just going to turn it off. I literally hit undo and I couldn't undo it. Sweet! We have viewers. Thank you for the compliment on the opposite perspective. Oh, man. And Jake, I really appreciate you watching and being on board, buddy. Okay, so again, the way these things go is generally when I'm writing a blog, I don't talk a hell of a lot. So if you have any questions while I'm writing, want to know about the process, anything like that, feel free to ask. I don't know how interesting watching someone else write is. I'm going to continue to wipe sweat away from my face because it's very hot here in Seattle and I've got my apartment closed up and the fan going on. I'm just trying to reduce the noise. So anyway, it could be a hell of a lot louder if I opened up the whole apartment, but I'm just going to sweat because why not? So here's where I have to get myself into a mode where I'm not talking and I'm writing instead. This is the fun part. I was actually just telling a friend yesterday, I was like, I really enjoy doing the stream, but I also like talking while I'm on the stream, and I need to continue to stream to have practice to be able to just get into a writing mode and see if I can make it comfortable. And it generally doesn't start, me writing doesn't generally start with me going like, I don't know the words I'm going to say. Generally, I'm doing something else, and I think of the sentence, and like an opening sentence, and then I go on a rant, just like I did verbally, but I just did it verbally, so now I've got to think of a sentence, and I had the sentence before I came on the stream, but now I've forgotten it because I'm amazing. Okay. This is what I want to say. I'm going to type it out anyway. This is the fun part where you see me figuring out what sentence I'm going to write. Once I get started, it's fine. It's always the very first sentence, and I always try to figure it out before I sit down. All right. Hold on one second. I've got to solve this fan situation because I'm getting crazy warm. I will once again be right back. Okay, let's see. The noise gate seems like it's working. It's going to be a little bit more noisy in the background though, because I moved the fan to a place where it can actually hit me. Ooh, okay. Camera is all right. Cool. Okay. That sentence of shout out to all my friends doing independent work at too low of a rate. This is welcome to my writing style is a lot more nice than my speaking style, but I throw these digs in there occasionally because there's a lot of stuff that I believe that isn't really at all what's trumpeted as popular opinion. And the fact that you can't make a lot of money at audio, or specifically at game audio, I don't think is super true. But clearly most sound designers are notoriously bad negotiators or business operators because most y'all don't actually stay in business. You don't have a business if you're not making money. If you're not actually selling something, you don't actually have a business yet. It's like if you're not making sounds, you're not actually a sound designer. I'm not a sound designer right now. Not making sounds. Haven't made sounds in quite a few years. Done a lot of implementation. I'm going to do a lot of implementation and sound design again very soon. Not that like the labels don't jump on and off of you. I'm being a little bit facetious, but just like it drives me nuts when a lot of the struggle of the artist is in the artist's head. And then those same artists don't believe that. I am really good. I'm notorious. I just had this conversation for 3 hours yesterday. I'm really notorious at overcomplicating things and making things more difficult than they need to be. I've had a lot of people tell me I'm like super ridiculously smart and I know a ton of things and I should be making super ridiculous amounts of money, and I don't make a bad living when I'm employed. Well, currently I'm self-employed and I'm still not making a horrible living. But I learn very quickly when I sit next to people that oftentimes I know a lot more about systems and programming and even sound stuff than a lot of people do, just because I've done it for 10 years. But really, to make money, you don't have to be mind-blowing. You don't actually, to make a lot of money as a sound designer, you don't actually have to be the best sound designer. You really actually don't. To make money as an implementer or a programmer or whatever, you don't actually have to be the best. You can be really good, but even that, like a lot of times, talent is only a small part of the equation. If you can sell people, I would argue that especially if you're going to be freelance, you should learn sales before you learn anything else. Anyway, I just wanted to talk about that because I dig at people verbally all the time. Well, not all the time, but part of my personality that I do get across on my writing is digging at people, but I don't think people know how far it goes sometimes. That being said, I still love everybody. Still think you people are great. I just want better for you. Jake, I would argue it's not all about marketing. It's all about knowing your clients. It's like, I'm going to go on a rant, because why not? And this is already going to go over 1 o'clock. Because if I start talking, then we're going to go to hell. Sales is like, and building a network and getting jobs in game audio. This is what I'm going to do next time. I'm not even going to write a blog. I'm just going to sit and talk to camera because I'm doing this naturally when I should be writing. Doing business, sales, all that sort of stuff, networking. Essentially being in business for yourself, which you always are, even if you're working for another company, is like being friends with people. It's like building friendships. It's not the same. It's like building friendships. And building friendships can be a part of that, but it's not the whole part, the whole thing. You don't walk into a meetup or somewhere where you can network with people and go with your business card in hand. Like, you don't do that. If you do that, that's the initial way, especially with creatives, but I'd argue with MBAs too. That's a one-way ticket to I'm never working with you ever, because you're just in this for the money. especially with artists. It's just like the worst thing you can possibly do. So that means you're playing a long-term game. When you're doing sales and you're selling things, whether it be a service or products, for example, I only sell products online. I don't actually sell services right now. If you want me to come program for you or implement for your game or whatever, I will. But I actually took down, I had a page up for a while that says work with me, and I took that down. Because I'm not selling a service business right now. So, but if you're doing anything like that, there's 3 steps for a client to work with you. They first have to know who you are, they have to like you, and then they have to trust you to be able to, for them to be able to part with their money, right? So you have to learn how to get yourself in front of people, and that can be as simple as like going out and meeting new people, which I'd argue is the best way to do it, not sitting in front of your computer or tweeting. You have to be personable. So that means you actually, when you get into that room, you have to get comfortable with talking to people, which is actually easier than you'd think. There's a ton about this in my book, and I'm probably going to put out a thing on networking at some point too. And then your personality has to come across so that they trust you with their reputation, right? Because especially when you're working in audio, if your initial job is going to be one of 2 things. Either you're going to go directly to your client, which in the case of sound design, you're going to go to game developers, because game developers are the people who pay you. But a lot of audio people just go to the audio meetups, which is the worst place, or one of the most horrible places to actually go to find work. But you can, because audio people might get too much work and then be able to refer you. So if they have so much work and they can't do it all, then they go, okay, I can't do this. Here, how about Jake, come do this job? Well, they're only going to recommend you to do the job if they trust that you can succeed. Right? That you can actually do the job. Because if you introduce somebody to your client or somebody who wants to work with you, then your reputation's on the line, right? And even if a client picks you up, even if it's a game developer, the game developer says, yes, come work with me. If the game developer is any bigger than 1 person, if there's like a team of people, then that team is relying on somebody's decision to hire the sound designer. And if the sound designer's bad, then the rest of the team is going to look at the person who hired them and go, why'd you hire this idiot? So you have to be known, be likable, and then be trustworthy, at the very least. Marketing to me implies that you're trying not to swindle someone. And people think of sales that way too, and that's not really that way. All that sales is the know, like, trust sequence, and then finding other people's problems and solving them. That's it. For the people who go buy my books, I've had enough experience where I can write from a place of knowledge and understanding, and then I've also been them at one point, because all of the sales page is everything from my experience and my thoughts and my emotions. So they know me because they come to my website. They like me because they experience my writing, or I get referred by someone. And then they trust via the sales page or being able to read content or whatever else. And then they put down $25 or $28, which is the current cost of the book. And then they'll buy it. And that's the whole process. And for me, I had to go through a sequence of figuring out that there were enough people who had the problem of how the hell do I feel like I have to win the lottery to be able to get a job in game audio. And I've done it, so I can teach it a little bit. But then I had to know that those people were there and exactly what they wanted and needed to hear. And then the truth is all in the book. And it's a lot of stuff that a lot of people don't want to hear, because it's mostly soft skills. It's not how to design. I can't I can't teach that. You don't want me to teach that. I'm not good at teaching that. And I don't think that teaching sound design is a primary need for somebody to actually become a sound designer. Like, I think that, like, you do need to have some sound design skill. You do need to not suck. But being good at playing with a DAW and making good sounds doesn't mean that that's the baseline, right? That's where you have to start. Everything else on top of that is where you actually get a job. I think I said it the wrong way. Marketing is in presentation, effective communication, and ability to sell yourself. Sure, Jake, like, I don't even think you're selling yourself. That's the thing. I'm talking about the definition of these terms and what I like and what I don't like, just purely from where I am at and how I view things. I literally had this conversation yesterday. A lot of people think they have to pitch someone to get work. Like, I have to pitch my sound design to a game developer, and that's actually the worst way to get work. You don't, if you're not pitching only works in volume, right? So if you're going to pitch somebody on something, you have to pitch a lot of people. And then hopefully through some of those pitches, you get a couple of gigs. And it works best in a market that's high volume. So like business pitches, entrepreneurs, selling houses, something that like has lots of stuff to it. I work hard to increase my value and the perception of my value. I don't try to sell myself. I try to make myself desirable. And I'm sure that I'm splitting hairs. I'm sure that some people that we're getting into the semantics of language, but I don't actually run out very often and try to get people to work with me, like active, that I'm aggressing, that I'm, what's the word I'm trying to think of? That I'm not always assertive. That's the word I'm trying to say. I'm not always trying to be assertive in getting people to work with me. Instead, often I'm assertive in trying to raise my value and sure, communicate that, but get people to come at me rather than me come at them. Yeah, see? Yeah, that's what I mean. Right. Splitting hairs, right? But it's fun. I get to rant at you over video, and now I'm like, I should just pop on a live stream and rant at people for an hour and then cut it off. This would be probably more entertaining than silence and me blogging. Because I can't talk while I write. Additionally, most sound designers are notorious bad negotiators. Okay, so but I know the ranting is the most fun part about a live stream. But I've said that I'm going to write, so I'm going to write. Check money up front. Additionally, most sound designers are notoriously bad negotiators. I'm glad that you're interested, Jake. I'm good at talking to nothing and nobody. I have plenty of opinion that I don't mind sharing with people, and my mouth will get me in trouble. Yeah. Hi, Fred. Nice to have you back, buddy. It's cool to have a couple of people watching me work all the time. And I don't know how long I'm going to be doing this for regularly. I think if I keep this up, I'm going to be streaming more on either evenings or weekends my time. Because I just worked out a new gig, which, as far as I know, I'll be starting, I don't know, 3 weeks, something like that. I don't know that I got an email today saying we want you to come work with us. Yay. And I don't know if that email included the start date because I haven't looked. So, yeah, I'll be doing a new gig where I'll be not available during the day, which is exciting. And I'll talk more about that once I've put my signature on a piece of paper. But right now, I'm not going to do that. Thanks, Fred. I appreciate it. Are you working on more ambiences today, Fred? Hi, Scott. Let's see. Oh, thanks, Fred. Appreciate that. I think it went over the head of some people, but that's fine. You can only do so much. I'm glad that you've learned and understood and followed along. And don't worry about interrupting, Scott. Like that's what the chat's for. Would you recommend a sound designer to learn middleware and how to program around straight into a game engine to avoid the issue you discussed at the beginning? No. No, 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 no. I would recommend a sound designer learn sound design. I would also recommend that you know how to navigate through middleware. And you just need to pick one to start. Doesn't like actually my argument for the best way to pick the middleware that you want to learn if you don't know either one of them, and I'm referring to Wise and Fmod just because they're the most ubiquitous, but there are more out there. Go look online. If you don't know where to start between Wise and Fmod, what I would argue is that you should pick 5 games that you really like. And then go like games that you really like that you would like to work on one day, like in a dream scenario, because you may or may not do this. But pick 5 games that you would like to work on, that you really like the games. Research what tools they use, and if you can find out that they used Wise or Fmod, then that's the one that you should go pick. It's just it literally doesn't matter. You could literally just go, I'm deciding Wise or I'm deciding Fmod. But like, let's say you wanted to go work with 343 Industries on Halo. The Halo team uses Wise, and if you don't know Wise, you're not going to get employed by the team over at Halo. If you wanted to go work on Forza, the guys over at Turn 10 use Fmod. If you don't know how to use Fmod, or you don't know, like, you can't pick it up quickly, you're not going to get employed by Turn 10, right? It's like you need to know the basic tool sets. What I would say is that regarding programming is a completely different skill set, especially with audio programming. And I think that the people there's this weird world of technical sound designer now where people are learning more about a little bit of programming and how to implement some basic scripting things with Wise, like using Python or C# or what have you, and that's not actual audio programming. Like, it is, but you can't go get a software developer job as an audio software developer by learning any of that kind of stuff. It will help you if you would like to be more technically inclined as a sound designer. It will help you. It won't hurt you pretty much in any way. I don't think that is the reason that anybody's going to hire you necessarily, unless they're looking specifically for somebody more technically inclined. Hi, that's why people hire me. But I say this, but most people come at me talking about sound design, and I try to make no bones that I'm not really a stupendous sound designer. Like, I can do it, but I'm not. There's schools that churn out 22-year-old sound designers, 21-year-old sound designers every year now, and that didn't really exist when I was coming up, and I don't want to compete with those guys. So I don't really work hard to get really good at that. Not to mention, programming pays a lot better than sound design. So I hope that answers your question, Scott. And I'll have to go look at your videos too, because Fred says that they're great. So I'll have to go watch them. And yeah, feel free to type in the chat box. Don't worry about bothering me or interrupting, whatever. I've learned that as long as I'm writing, because I have an audience, the writing a blog is going to take a lot longer. Normally I can get these things worked out in like half an hour, 45 minutes. But it takes me like 2 hours to do it when I'm streaming. So I think there's probably, unless you guys really, really enjoy the process of me like writing, I think there's going to be less of me writing and more of me picking a topic, putting a camera on myself, and just ranting about it with an audience. So cool. Glad to hear that. If you are interested in programming, though, Scott, what I would say is like you got to figure out where you are on the spectrum of I really like technical and code, and I really like playing in a DAW. If you really like playing in a DAW, the technical code stuff is going to supplement and help you, certainly, no matter what you do. But you shouldn't, I would always say that you should not rely on that to be the reason that you get a job, because you'll lose your sound design skills. Like learn some stuff and learn it for fun. Go take some courses where you can learn about implementation with Unity. I don't get paid by them, but I'm a very big advocate of Leonard Paul's School of Game Audio. I took their WISE course in 2013, or his WISE course in 2013. I don't know if he has a team or not. And it's part of, I stick that on my resume now. It's part of why people hired me. I worked for 343, and they didn't even ask if I knew WISE or not because it's on my resume. He's got a Unity sound design course that also does implementation. There's tons of YouTube videos about that stuff. I just started a course on the Chuck audio programming language. That's real-time, on-the-fly, live programming intended for performance. I'm paying to do that, and that's just a thing I think is cool. And sure, certainly, if I have that on a resume, and I'm also going to have to explain to people what the hell Chuck is, because most people don't know what that is. It's Chuck as in like CHUCK, but the last K is capitalized. Go look it up. It's developed by a PhD professor at Stanford. It's really, really cool. He's got a TED Talk on it. Ge Wang is his name. G-E Wang. But yeah, I'm learning all that stuff because I'm interested in it. And it just so happens that in the process, if I learn some stuff and I learn it well enough, then I can add it to my resume and then explain to people why that's important. Because that's part of just coming to a common understanding of what you do. Yeah. Yeah, I can't say bad things. Well, I can. I didn't. There were parts of it back then I didn't love, but I also didn't know it was relatively new when I first got on talking about School of Video Game Audio. But I will say, Leonard has been around for a really long time, and he's got a great reputation. I think that he does a good enough job teaching all of the subjects that he teaches, and especially he recently showed me some of the Unity reels that his students have come up with, where they literally did sound design using the stock Unity audio system, and I was super impressed by how custom they made their they had to. Stock Unity just isn't, you can only get so far with it. It doesn't allow you to do a whole hell of a lot with sound design before you have to start customizing the actual Unity interface. Like, for example, in WISE, you have a random container, you have a sequence container, you have a blend container, you have parenting, parent-child elements with property inheritance and all this stuff. The Unity audio system has like almost none of that. You have to make your own random container, for example. So that means that his students had to not only do the sound design part, but if they wanted to customize something and make it really cool, then they had to go and program C#. And a lot of them, there was like 2 or 3 he sent me, and I'm sure that he sent me like the best of the best, but they were really good. And just like any other audio school scenario, if you're going to go and learn audio at a school, it's up to you what you do with the information that you're given. So the people who succeed at audio are the people who are going to succeed at audio regardless of if they go and do a school or not, generally. It's like most creatives. Most creatives are going to succeed like you know beforehand if they're going to succeed or not, because they decide they're going to succeed, they commit to the success, they find something, they work at it, right? Schools, especially creative trade schools, exist not to get you a job, but to speed up the learning process. And if you're convinced that you're going to do everything that you can to get a job, regardless of if the school is going to do anything or not, then the school is going to equip you with learning and tools and like a base to grow from, and then it's all up to you from there. That's literally every school I've ever gone to, even college did that for me. The only exception about a college degree is, especially in America, it's really hard to get a job if you don't have a bachelor's degree. You have to fight and convince people. You have to sell really hard that you should be able to get a job without a bachelor's degree. Oh, come on. Take the italics off, please. I'm slightly jealous that you get paid to study, Fred. Just slightly. The whole conversation, like I feel like from an American perspective, because obviously we don't get paid to learn here and all that. We pay to learn here. We pay lots to learn here. People do it very stupidly sometimes. In fact, I advocate people don't go get sound design degrees. If you're an American and if you're an American kid who wants to become a sound designer and you're an aspiring sound designer, and you're thinking about going to get a degree, don't go get a sound design degree if you're listening to me. Go get an electrical engineering degree. It will serve you so much better. You can actually do things if you don't succeed as a sound designer, or if you become 50 and you can't keep being a sound designer because you need too much money and you get priced out of the market. If you have an electrical engineering degree, you can learn sound and how sound works through electrical engineering, like analog electrical signals, and you will have a whole world at your fingertips if sound design fails you. And you'll get paid a hell of a lot more money. And you'll probably quit sound design because you can get a job doing electric-based stuff, and you make a hell of a lot more money. I'm the crazy inverse. Before I got into doing video games, I had left doing film work, and I went into architectural design, audiovisual architectural design. And my wife, like, to this day, I don't know that my wife will ever forgive me, because I had a incredible, stable career path, working in a cubicle, working on very large buildings for very large companies, and then I quit that to go do video games. I was like, I'm making more money now than I was making then, but I'm making more money now because of that gave me a huge pay raise. So yeah, I actually thought about doing a Full Sail online degree because I would like to go get a master's. At some point I'm going to do that. I was looking at, I want to say, an entrepreneurship master's from Full Sail, which is funny because how do you teach entrepreneurship? You do entrepreneurship. But my wife talked me out of it because it's the whole for-profit university thing and blah blah blah, because I have plans after getting them eventually doing a master's degree, which I'm going to do that at some point. We'll just see when that happens. Okay, tell us what time being wasted anyway. I would, Fred. I would go to Denmark and get paid for taking a master's, but I'm married, and my wife likes me being around, and she's got a really great, stable job, and we're not moving, at least until after she's done with that job. So I have considered going to work for companies either in other locations or other countries, but the only way I would do that is if we could work out a deal where I came on site for long enough for the team to get used to working with me, and then I could go remote. So like 6 months on site and then go remote after that. But not a ton of employers are willing to do that for very obvious reasons. So thus I stay in Seattle. Don't worry. You guys, by buying all of my products and being a fan and blah blah blah, are going to help me succeed in doing all the master's degree and all that sort of stuff. Between my wife and I, we have 4 or 5 jobs. So, but I like working. I don't play games and Netflix all that often. Okay. For almost 2 months, my friend and his programmer were deadlocked. I appreciate that. Yeah. A big motivation behind me doing online business is I do want to be permanently self-employed again, and one day that will happen. We're not there yet. And also, I want to do some ridiculous amounts of education and some other things which would require me to step away from a full-time job. But by the time I go to do that, there's a likelihood that my wife and I are going to have a house, potentially kids or a dog or something, like, or both. And I don't, as the leader of my household, as the like breadwinner for the most part, want to put my wife and my family in a position where they have to fend for themselves. As my wife doesn't make the amount of money that I do. Sure, if we changed her career and position, she could. But we're kind of leaning towards I would love for her to be a stay-at-home mom, or at least to have that option. And she is kind of leaning that way too. So, but we're talking about it. We don't know. But either way, like, I want to be able to make enough money where I can go and do the other things that I want to do and not have to like be concerned with the money. And since we don't have, you can't go get paid to take a master's in America, unlike Denmark. It's the way that it works. I don't even know. If you know, Fred, like, do you know what are non-citizens, do they get the same deal as citizens in Denmark? If I were just to take this to a crazy place, if I were to go and try to get a degree in Denmark, do you guys take people from other countries and pay them to get? That sounds crazy. That sounds like it would be nuts. That's what I'm saying, Scott. This is where I would go, well, you should look that up for me. Even then, I don't. Yeah, I don't know how that would work. I don't see the idea of living away from my wife for a couple of years being a very good idea. Thanks, Fred. Hey, but Scott, if I'm an American citizen and they'll take exchange students from America, I'm sure that they'll take them from Britain too. They'll just take them from everywhere. It'd be great. Then the question is what you want to study in Denmark? And are we just all moving to Denmark to hang out with Fred then? I just think it's super freaking cool that you got, like, it's hilarious. Most of my audience online isn't from America. You would think that the people who follow me most live in America, but it seems like a lot of the audience who follows me are from the UK and a decent amount of you are from Europe too. I do get a lot of American hits too, but like the people who email me, y'all are all from Britain, man. The vast majority of you who email me are not local, are not from America even. That's hilarious. India. Man, yeah, Scott, there's sound designers are funny. Okay, you have to have EU citizenship or Danish citizenship. Yep, Scott's screwed. But you guys are still part of the EU right now, right? Like, that's not done yet, as far as I know. I don't really want to go into politics, but I'm just curious. Um, yeah, sound designers, there is a lot of competition. A lot of sound designers are like, there's no competition, it's community. I'm like, bullshit, man. Um, like, yeah, sure, it can be a community, but when it comes down to getting a job, like, you're competing. Uh, I will say the UK, Britain specifically, turns out it seems like an exorbitant amount of audio software developers. The best audio software developers I have met and worked with and talked with, the vast majority of them are from Britain. Yeah, I don't know why. I'm assuming that there's a couple of schools that have taught it, but like I have not found a lot of American audio software developers that are like well known or that I've just interacted with a whole hell of a lot. So 50%, you mean like, okay, but clarify networking events, Scott. Is that like game development networking events in general? Yeah, see, you can just go ahead and start your master's degree or your whatever degree in Denmark right now, and then you'll be good. You'll be grandfathered in. It'll be great. Yeah, and I'm not surprised, Fred, that you don't have a ton of people who work in games and stuff in Denmark because I uh, I imagine there's not a ton of game developers in Denmark. I don't know. I don't remember where CD Projekt Red is from, but um, I don't know that there's a ton of game development studios, especially big ones, in Denmark. So, yeah, when I talk about audio software developers, I just mean low-level audio programmers, which is somebody who's working in C++ on what I would call an audio engine. That means VSTs, that means people who are creating a DAW, that means people who are working to create middleware, that means people who are working on the audio for game engines. It essentially means that you have the ability to access and modify DSP, like do digital signal processing at a low level. Ah, right. Yep, Hitman. Yeah, it gets different when you are trying to network when there's not a lot of people around you, that's for sure. Oh, thanks. I I'm horrible with European geography and knowing where people are from and stuff. I'm sorry. I'm a stock American. Can't help it. Well, I can help it. I choose not to, I guess. I don't know. That's funny because game industry meetups here, I haven't been to a ton of them, but most of them aren't. Most of them aren't full of sound designers. Sound designers here in America just want to hang around other sound designers, and sound designers here in America are super timid for the most part. Most of us are fearful and don't have networking skills or like communication skills and are all introverts and blah blah blah. It's actually really it's not that it's not hard to get a job here. But like it wouldn't be very hard to stand out if you're just comfortable in a room and feeling free to have a personality. Yes, I will be making software products of my own, if that's what you're asking, Jake. I'm actually in the middle of doing that in a couple of different ways. My problem, and I have a software product of my own that's completely free. If you go on my products page, there's the WAPI CS framework that's not 100% finished. That is intended to make the Wise authoring API a lot easier to use, and it's in C#. That was built for other people to use and as a resume thing, like a demo, essentially. But I've got a number of different people who want me to make different softwares, and I will do that. I'm getting myself up to speed on C# or not C#, C++ quite a bit, because programming low-level audio in C++ is a lot different than anything else, and I found that there's a lot of people who are like, I'm learning C++, and you go and do do like a beginner C++ course and you learn the language. But that doesn't mean you actually know C++. That's like a huge, if you say you do at that point, what I've learned is that's a pretty huge insult to actual software developers who are doing engine level software development. So I try to differentiate a lot that I am not I'm an audio software developer and professional because I've developed software and it's done audio stuff, but it hasn't been, I'm not a low level, not an engine programmer is like what I like to say. I've done some interviews recently where people are like, what do you know? And I'm like, I don't do what you do. I do like maybe a quarter, maybe an eighth of it. I'd like to have the capabilities to do more. I'm going to be in a certificate program next year at the local university here to do C++, so I'll have that on my resume. And then you'll see me doing more and more software over time for sure. Okay. So if it gets near 2 o'clock, and I keep talking, what I'm going to do is I'm going to end the stream in 40 minutes my time, even if I'm not done writing, because I need to finish the writing. And then next time I do a stream, I think I'm just going to rant at you guys. I think I'm going to start picking topics and just chit-chatting with people. Or just I guess maybe I'll start giving talks. Maybe that'll be the thing. Here's my talk. I haven't actually stood in front of an audience and given a talk yet. At some point, I'll probably do that. People are pretty obsessed with the idea of giving talks. Okay. Programmer ended up receiving numerous frustrated messages about the situation. You're welcome. Thanks for hanging out, Scott. I appreciate it. Now you can see what I look like when actually getting into a writing flow and typing at full speed. Yeah, I could do that. Jake, I could just talk about the blog I wrote. I don't know. I'm not trying to have the perfect idea for streaming right now. Like I started streaming like what, Fred, 2 days ago. So the whole point of doing this, and especially doing this the way that I'm doing it, is I just thought it would be fun and a neat idea to start streaming. I just knocked into my desk and shook the camera. That was awesome. I just thought it would be a fun and neat idea to start streaming. It's something I've been interested in doing. It's something that I realized I actually have the equipment and capability to do. And instead of trying to figure out what I wanted to stream and how I wanted to stream and do all this sort of stuff, I decided to just start streaming. Because a lot of times I'm trying to live out in real time what I tell people. You don't become a programmer or a sound designer by deciding what to do, or like figuring out what you want to do first and then doing it. I would argue that you should just do it and then figure out what you like and what you don't like. So you're seeing in real time me I'm like sitting here writing, and it's a quiet stream, and maybe it's entertaining, maybe it's not, but I'm figuring out in real time like what feels good. And then I also get to hear back from people who are watching and being like, this was super boring, or which none of you have said, and you totally can. Or like, I'd like to see you do this, or I'd like to hear you talk. And you guys are clearly responding. You guys are clearly responding to me talking. So and I'm enjoying it. So, yep. I got into audio. So I was doing computer science to begin with, ironically enough. Actually, I failed out of computer science, believe it or not. And I was super into the same music that a friend of mine was into, and he was going to school for theater. And so their theater group was losing their audio guy. And and yes, it was audio guy. So I became the person to fill in, essentially. And 3 years later, I had a degree in theater. And then I was like, what am I going to do with this? Horrible idea. Don't get a degree in theater. I made it work. But that my degree in theater is not what got me a job or what's made anything work. Yeah. Hey man, jazz guitar's cool. Everybody starts somewhere. That sentence that's in parentheses, why I get hired, that is the most, for those of you who are looking to get work, that's the most important sentence of this entire blog. There is so much value and gold just in that sentence. And you can notice that it has nothing to do with audio or programming. And that's actually, that is almost 100% why I am getting hired at the gig I'm about to go to. Yes, I do need the skills and all the other things, but that's the tipping point. Oh, like a selling point? Sure. Okay, having done programming audio work. Cool, thanks Jake. Appreciate you being here. And I'll try to make this a little less slow and mundane next time. And shorter. I don't want to go 2 hours on streams all the time. Can't do that. Yes, I do see. Yes, Fred, I do see people wanting to do too many things. Um, what I'd ask is, are you making money doing all of those things? Because, yeah, let me ask that first, and then I'll go on my rant. Are you making money doing all of those things? And if you're making money, are you making money that you can live on? That's awesome. I would not worry about it then if I were you. I would actually. So if you're making enough money to live on, but you're concerned you're spreading yourself too broadly, what's your actual concern? Because is it not you're not making enough money, or not to live enough on yet? Okay, got it. That clarifies it. So here's the thing. I'm a jack of all trades, but that's just kind of how my career went. If you go look at my LinkedIn, I don't know where that's linked anymore because I took it off my website, but you can search for me on LinkedIn. Everything is Adam T. Croft. You'll find me. My resume is so widely varied, and I've got over 10 years of experience doing audio. So because of that, I come at business situations and have to explain to people, to my potential client, when they'll go, can you do this? Can you do that? Can you do this? Can you do that? And I say yes, pretty much for everything, but then clarify the varying degrees of it. And eventually it often gets to them being like, so you can just do everything? Like, are you just one of those kids? And I have to clarify that no, I've had the fortunate opportunity to do a ton of different work over a decade, and high level stuff. In games, I've gotten to work on now what has been and will be probably the biggest North American intellectual property releases of the last 5 or 10 years. I worked on Destiny 1 a little bit and contracted on that. I wasn't part of the main audio team, but I still worked on it. And I used to work on what is now Halo Infinity, or Halo Infinite, sorry, not Infinity. Had some time with that team, which was awesome. So, and then before that, did a ton of other stuff. So, but if you're just starting out, you got to understand, if you're comparing me and what I do to somebody who's just starting, or you're still a student in some ways, like, I've earned all that over 10 years, and I can clarify with people, and I've got a network that I've built over years, and all of this other stuff. I've got resources, resumes, recommendations just built up over time. If you're a student, you have to start somewhere, and you have to start at one place. I would not, as a student, and I do not advocate students calling themselves sound designers, implementers, programmers, and composers, because you can't be everything. You can be one thing at a time, and you can be everything over time, but you're going to be better at some things and not as good at other things. I am not a fantastic creative sound designer. There are people who see objects and go, I can put these things together, and if I put this mic to it and then scratch on that and do this weird thing and then put it in a DAW and then put them together and then throw this plugin over it, then I can make this really cool sound. My brain doesn't work like that. I have to work harder than other people to make that stuff happen. But as far as like engineering and development and that kind of stuff goes, my brain goes more technical. So I have to clarify, yes, I can do sound design. I'm not the fastest, I'm not the best, but I can do. But I have these technical skills that make up for it. So Not to mention I've just done so much other stuff. I've built buildings with multi-million-dollar AV budgets before. Like there's just that's project management that I can do, right? So I know how to work in a team. I know how to communicate cross-discipline. I know how to do just all sorts of stuff. And I'm just really good at not making friends with people, but working well. Like I can go meet an artist and find out what the artist needs and help the artist so that the artist will help me. Even though it's a completely different perspective from my work. So, but if you're just starting out, I would say find the discipline that you enjoy the most and go do it. It's either that, you got two perspectives. Find the discipline that you enjoy the most and go do it, or pick the one that makes the most money and learn to love it. One of the two. I'm not all about like going and following your passions, even though that's kind of what I did. I think people are much more well off by realistically asking themselves what they want and then figuring out how to get there. So that answers your question. But again, figuring out what you want is like, it's like this thing that people seem to not know how to do these days, is to just have a thought and an opinion and know what they want and stick to it. And like you have to decide one thing, right? Just one thing. I'm almost done. I think I'm going to make it in 10 minutes. And then we can kill the stream. And then I'll come back and rant at you later. Yeah, if you're 100% sure you want to go, like, you're not going to lose your composition skills. You're not. Like, and you can be a sound designer or composer. You can. What I would advocate is you should just get known for one first. And then when you're known as a good sound designer and you have stable work or you're bringing in income or whatever, and you get freed up to go back and compose more as a hobby than as a job, then compose as a hobby with the intent that you're going to use that as as demos, right? Go do redesigns like you would do for sound design now and say, hey, I'm an established sound designer, and then I'm building up all of this composition work on the other side to say that I can do composition. That's exactly what I'm doing with programming. So I am not a madly skilled, low-level C++ audio engine programmer, but I'm hoping that before the end of the year, I'll have my first major C++ software written. It'll be bad, but it'll exist. I'm going to go do software. I'm going to learn more about C++ software engineering at a university next year. And then when I get out of that, I'm going to have more demo work, and I'll be able to be like, hey, like, look, I can actually do some more intense software development. I don't know that I want to be an engine programmer. I'm not sure that's the route I want to go. But I definitely want to develop and provide software to people and teach how to do that. So, but that stuff, like, I'm doing sound design and primarily implementation and things and stuff that I already know how to do, and building up this programming and the writing and everything else on the side. So, and eventually one day that'll all overtake it. People say that to me a lot, Fred. You're welcome. Thinking is good. If you think first, you make a decision, then you commit and act. You do those three things, and you actually follow through with them, you will be ahead of like 90% of people, 95% of people. Most people are like, I want to do this, I want to do this, no, I want to do this, no, I want to do this. And they don't pick one thing to just, yeah, right? As part of that rant before I finish up, imagine yourself in, okay, I'm in my 30s. I imagine myself 30 years from now. What do I want to say that I've been doing for 30 years? Also, I look at people who are working in audio who are in their 60s or their 50s. And do I want to end up like them, or do I not want to end up like them? Right? Just some food for thought. Because, yeah. You've got to constantly be evaluating where you're at and where you're going. Because I know some guys I don't want to end up like. And they're great, fine people. I just don't want to... Yeah. Always got to be thinking about what you want. Committing to it. Changing up. It's like being a musician, man. When a band or when David Bowie was not always the same David Bowie. David Bowie had different phases of his career, which is what made him consistently a high performer in art, right? Not that his music was always super highly successful, but he had some fans that always stuck with him. And then he did some changes that some people didn't like. He did some changes that some people did like. And then he even started an acting career later on in life, right? But young David Bowie was not the same as old David Bowie. Just because he's an entertainer doesn't mean it's any different than for you as somebody who works. Like, you might not always be doing the same thing 30 or 40 years down the line. And if you don't start defining that in your own brain, it doesn't mean that you got to pick what you want to do. Like, I'm 50 years from now, I'm going to be doing this specific thing. But, like, have a vague idea of, like, what would it be cool to say that you've been doing for 20 or 30 years, right? And who knows? You might not be doing any of that, but at least have an idea and be working towards something. And then when opportunities in life hit you, then you can move accordingly. It might. Who knows? I'm at least half talking out of my ass at all times, so. But I appreciate that you have faith in me. Ah. Well, this was going to be a big blog on technical stuff, but it didn't turn out that way. It came out on soft skills, which is cool. Look at that. I almost all the time come up with 14 to 1500 word posts. That's hilarious. All right, let's schedule this and write the email, and then next time, whenever I schedule that, I'll pick a topic to rant on for like half an hour and just do that. Are there any other questions y'all have before I sign off? Writing the email is not going to take entirely too long, hopefully. Oh, let me hide my login. Hold on one moment. Whoa. Go. Do. I'm free to leave. I'm glad that I have your permission to turn off my own stream when I want to, Fred. So pleased. I appreciate you trying to hook me up with some free education in Denmark, paid education. Okay. Now, back. You can see my screen again. What did I name this one? Why engineers? Some engineers fight against middleware. Yeah, this whole blog was going to be on this, like, middleware's bloated and blah, 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 and it turned into a friend had a problem and he solved it with empathy and communication skills. And you should have those too, which is also true. $7.25. Make sure I scheduled that appropriately. Well, yes, okay, I did. I hope this teaches you who are watching, Fred and otherwise, that you don't need to have your content and what you're going to do figured out before you do it. Like, you don't, if you're going to become a sound designer, you don't need to know what type of sound designer, exactly what sounds you're going to design, all the stuff. Like, just start working, just start making stuff, and then it'll work out. We're seeing that I struggle to write when I'm talking to people, and now I'm more comfortable with the writing part and being quiet, but I end up talking, which makes the writing process take a hell of a lot longer, and something that I'm not in love with. So now I'm going to switch it up, try something new. We'll see how that goes, and I feel like that will probably go a lot better because clearly I'm already going like blah 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 at the camera. So okay. Ah, what the hell did I just do? Oh. I had the chat box up and put a new tab on the chat box. Oops. This is what it's like to make content. Super exciting. All right. Okay, that all looks right, right? No. What's wrong? Something's wrong. File equals color. That's probably what I didn't do. That's 7 BC0. There we go. Cool. Save. All right, y'all. That's a little over 2 hours of stream in the can. Let me just schedule this sucker. I'll probably stream again on Friday, I think. Sometime during the day. I'll figure out if there's a topic I want to rant on. Fred, if there's anything specifically you want me to talk about, since I think you're the only one still here, shoot me a tweet, shoot me an email, whatever. If there's anything specific you want to hear me talk about. Because you're around, I can say, hey, give me some info. Okay, I'm gonna go out tomorrow at 9. Sweet. My work here is done. I need to schedule a tweet, but I'll do that later. All right, now that we've been streaming forever, I'll kill the stream. Thanks for joining me, and hopefully you're not too insanely bored. And I'll probably be back Friday, but check the content calendar, adamtcroft.com/calendar. I keep meaning to like pitch my site at the very beginning of this, but I keep forgetting to do that. Oh well. All right, so that's it. Take care. Oh, let me do my sweet have a good day slide. See you, Fred. Thanks for joining. Thanks for anybody who's watching after the fact. You're very much appreciated. Hope this was informative and interesting somehow. All right, take care.